Ukraine's military has firmly rejected Russia's claim that Russian forces have liberated Kupiansk. Ukrainian officials say the city remains under Ukrainian control and accuse Moscow of pushing a coordinated disinformation campaign to mask its battlefield failures. It is noted that Kupiansk remains under the control of Ukraine's defense forces. According to the Center for Countering Disinformation under the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, Russian propaganda continues to spread fake claims about having full control over Kupiansk. In particular, propagandists are claiming the alleged elimination of several Ukrainian sabotage groups on the approaches to Kupiansk. They insist these groups were supposedly sent into an offensive to maintain information hype around the city. The CPD stresses that these reports have nothing to do with reality and are yet another fabrication of Russian propaganda. Russian propaganda has been spreading disinformation about the alleged full capture of Kupiansk and the supposed encirclement of 15 Ukrainian Defense Forces battalions in the city since early December, but these claims were refuted by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. On December 3, Oleksandr Syrsky stated that Ukrainian troops had significantly improved their tactical position directly in Kupiansk, infiltration routes for Russian sabotage groups were fully blocked, and Ukrainian forces were working to gradually push the occupiers out of the bridgehead north of the city and from other areas where Russian forces still attempt to maintain a presence. In reality, the majority of Kupiansk is under the control of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, and fighting continues in the city. No Ukrainian units are encircled, the CPD noted. The center once again urges citizens to trust only verified sources of information. Ukraine's military leadership said these fabricated Russian announcements are intended to compensate for devastating losses and to maintain internal propaganda narratives. It is noted that this latest information fabrication is aimed solely at hiding the critical losses of the Russian army, which is being forced into constant meat assaults. Analysis of frontline reports indicates that Russian forces have not yet achieved encirclement or reliable blocking of Ukrainian groupings on any axis. Assertions made by Putin and senior Russian commanders are being actively contested not only by Ukrainian and independent OSINT analysts but also by Russian military correspondents. The commander of Sea Drone operations for Ukraine's military intelligence agency says more complex strikes against Russian forces are expected next year, after Kiev's uncrewed fleet succeeded in curbing the movements of Russia's once dominant Black Sea Navy. In an interview with the Associated Press, the head of the specialized maritime drone unit, Group 13, said Ukraine's attacks have forced Russia to adapt, limiting opportunities for major Black Sea strikes seen earlier in the war. Today, we've likely reached a plateau, said the officer, who is identified only by the call sign 13th under Ukrainian military protocol. We are effectively limiting the enemy's movements, but those dramatic, high-profile strikes we saw earlier haven't happened for quite some time. That's because the enemy has adapted. Last month, Ukrainian officials said sea attack drones were used in strikes against vessels in Russia's sanctions-evading shadow fleet of oil tankers. The commander declined to comment on those operations. The officer said Russian naval vessels barely operate, often venturing only up to 25 miles from port to fire missiles before retreating. They constantly hide. And in a way, that's also a result of our unit because you can imagine the cost of maintaining a fleet that cannot operate at sea. The officer spoke in uniform, his face covered and eyes obscured by tinted glasses. For security reasons, the intelligence agency asked that the location and other details of the interview not be disclosed. Drone technology has become vital to Ukraine's military, offering inexpensive tools for reconnaissance and strikes in countering Russia's invasion. Its two Sea Drone programs are run separately by its military and domestic intelligence services. Group 13 operates the Magura family of sea drones, which Ukraine credits with multiple strikes on Russian ships. The unit currently deploys two variants: the V-5, a smaller ramming drone, and the larger V7, a weapons platform. Both are controlled remotely using suitcase-sized consoles equipped with joysticks, screens, and safety switches. At a recent demonstration, operators showed a V7 fitted with modified US-made Sidewinder air-to-air missiles. In May, the intelligence agency said a Magura drone shot down a Russian fighter jet, a development the commander called a breakthrough in maritime warfare. He said the next stage of Ukraine's drone evolution will rely on deeper integration of artificial intelligence, using a growing archive of operational video and sensor data to improve targeting and reduce operator workload. Right now, target search is a combined process, part operator, part AI, he said. In the future, you'll launch the drone and it will independently search for a target, distinguish civilian vessels from military ones, and make more of the decisions. Ukraine's military, he added, had a huge amount of operational data available to further train AI models.
Today, we've likely reached a plateau. We are effectively limiting the enemy's movements, but those dramatic, high-profile strikes we saw earlier haven't happened for quite some time. That's because the enemy has adapted. We're working on many fronts to change the situation and create a turning point. For now, I can say this: we haven't lost effectiveness. We've simply reached a point where we're holding the enemy in check. The enemy is entrenched. Ships barely operate. They go out 20 nautical miles, launch ballistic missiles, and return. They constantly hide. And in a way, that's also a result of our unit, because you can imagine the cost of maintaining a fleet that cannot operate at sea. Right now, target search is a combined process, part operator, part AI. In the future, you'll launch the drone and it will independently search for a target, distinguish civilian vessels from military ones, and make more of the decisions. Today, we already have a huge amount of data, video and operational material that can be used to train the AI.